Hello and welcome, history fans, to History Play-by-Play. Today, what's in the Bill of Rights?
In all alone. Dangle, shot. He scores!
So the Bill of Rights are the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, and they were a promise made to the Anti-Federalists saying, hey, if we give you these amendments, will you sign on and say the Constitution is a good thing? And they did. What made that so important? That these are rights guaranteed to individuals and the states. These are a limit on national power, on federal power. In that, we were so worried about the federal government, a national government, getting so out of control and becoming like a tyrannical government, just like we left from Britain. So you need as many things as specific limits saying that the national government cannot do this, 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 and this, in order to make sure we never have another king and we never need another American Revolution. So, real quick, see if you can name these as we go through. The First Amendment, which is freedom of speech, religion, assembly, and press. And we'll go through these in detail and what's actually written in them. This is what is probably the most cited. There's a reason it's number one. It's what allows me to talk about this and even criticize the government today. Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. That's the other one that's brought up the most. There's a reason it's number two. Third Amendment, let's see how many know it. No quartering of soldiers. We'll talk about what that means. Fourth Amendment, I always wonder about the person who guesses this one rather quickly. It's illegal search and seizure. The rights that you have to not have your stuff gone through. Fifth Amendment, I plead the fifth. No self-incrimination. Sixth Amendment, the right to a speedy trial. Seventh Amendment, trial by jury. Eighth Amendment, cruel and unusual punishment. The Ninth Amendment, 9 and 10 kind of muddled together and at the same time are very important, but are poorly understood. Number 9, if it's not banned by the Constitution, it's allowed. You're allowed to do it. And number 10, or at least it's not unconstitutional. And number 10, unless the Constitution says no, the states can do whatever they want. It's all about, look, if it's not here, it says if it's not written down here that you can't do it, you can do it. Rather than saying, here's a list of all the things you can do. If it's not there, have at it. Let's look piece by piece. First Amendment. Congress shall make no law. That is the most important thing as a takeaway. If you can remember that Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of a religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. It's a bit long, it's a bit wordy, but it is so essential. It's based on the Virginia Declaration of Rights written by George Mason, that basically said the government shouldn't hurt basic freedoms, and it combines with Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom by Thomas Jefferson, which there's 3 things listed on Thomas Jefferson's tombstone of the things he's most proud of. Declaration of Independence, founding the University of Virginia, and the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom. So it's kind of a big deal. He had outlawed having an official state religion for the state of Virginia, or the colony of the Virginia. I'm not sure when exactly it was penned, but this says that the government will not adopt a state religion, will not favor any one religion, and that is an ongoing number of battles in courts since the beginning. But the Founding Fathers were very afraid of the governance of the church that had so shaped European history with the Protestant Reformation and everything going on. And I mean, the Holy Roman Empire, it's a whole mess. So just avoid the whole thing. Secularism. That's all that's in there. And freedom of speech and to be able to petition your government is a key idea. The Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's it. All the controversy that I'm sure you've seen is in that very, very short sentence. Because the Founding Fathers were deliberately vague in just about all of this, there's a lot of interpretation, and that interpretation shifts. Early on, prior to 1920s, there was a lot more emphasis on the militia side of things, but since then we have focused much more on the end, shall not be infringed. It's right there. It's very tangible of the importance of firearms, of of arms, which is assumed to be firearms. But again, there's a lot of interpretation here. And that deliberate vagueness is all of the debate. Third Amendment. No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. So in the prior to the Revolution, one of the major grievances of the United States was that Britain was taking was taking British soldiers and saying, hey, they're going to be stationed in your home or in your inn, and you're responsible for feeding them and having a place for them to sleep. Not much you could do about it. That was it. So this was extremely important to the people living at the time, that this cannot happen in America. It's a paranoia. I'm sure there's a lot of debate on police, but I think just about everyone can empathize with the idea of, when you have a police officer behind you and you're driving and you just feel nervous, like, what did I do wrong? What am I going to do wrong? You're always real quick on those turn signals and so on. Well, that paranoia, imagine them living in your home. And there were no police forces. That wasn't a thing until the 1840s at least. So this was all encompassing of, this paranoia, this concern of what am I doing wrong, of the government maybe putting some pressure on people that it's worried about as being problems. This was a very important amendment, even though we don't think about it much today. Fourth Amendment. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, so on and so forth. That this is that you are not allowed to be searched by anyone federal unless it is warranted, and that usually means having an actual warrant saying that we are going to search these places at these times. There's a lot of leeway in all of that, but essentially you are not allowed to be searched without giving your consent unless there are court methods around it. Now, there are a lot of ways to give your consent without really thinking about it. Can we take a look around? You go, hey, sure, whatever. Well, you just gave consent. There's a lot in that. But generally, you are allowed a modicum of privacy in your possessions unless they go through the proper channels. It's always the argument between, well, if you have nothing to hide, you shouldn't worry about, and then, well, why are you looking if you don't think I have anything to hide? It's a big back and forth. But I mean, that's the fun of all of these. Fifth Amendment. Well, I'm not going to continue reading all these; they're getting longer. So double jeopardy. You cannot be charged for the same crime twice. Witness. That's not including appeals. That's a different thing. Be a witness against themselves. Meaning that you don't have to confess. If you did something, you can remain quiet about it. And you may not be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, where they can't just throw you in jail and forget about you. You have to have the process. Sixth Amendment, the right to a speedy and public trial. No being arrested and thrown in jail and saying, well, we'll get to your trial eventually, and 50 years goes by and you die in that cell, and well, oh well. You can't treat someone as guilty without the trial, and that trial needs to happen in a reasonable amount of time. Reasonable is very, malleable word, considering the pressure on the court systems in the last century. These times seem to be longer and longer and longer, and there's issues with holding people without bond and so on. But you are guaranteed a trial in reasonable amounts of time. Seventh Amendment, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved, in that you are supposed to have a jury of your peers in order to decide this. Basically, trying to get around the idea of there's not going to be military tribunals, there's not going to be congressmen are not going to be doing the trial against you. This is supposed to be of the people, by the people, for the people. Eighth Amendment. I always like to use this when I was a kid, saying that, taking this test was violating my Eighth Amendment rights, and then watching the wheels turn on the teacher. It never worked, but I enjoyed the crap out of it. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. Basically, if someone steals a car, you can't drop a car on them. You cannot do anything crazy or cruel or throw people in a dungeon and let them starve to. Basically, that things have to be done reasonably. This is one of those things that is super relevant today. The Ninth Amendment. the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. If it's not in the Constitution, then it cannot be unconstitutional. Where this is a rule of things that cannot be done, not a list of things that can be done. So anything that's not mentioned in here, that's up to a different law. It's not the Constitution. You might notice murder is nowhere in the Constitution. That means murder is not unconstitutional. It's just against the law on every other level, including the national government. It's all about levels. That also ties in with the 10th Amendment. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. On the off chance of being controversial here, just explaining something, there have been many people saying that the use of masks is unconstitutional, that it is my constitutional right not to wear it. The Constitution doesn't say anything about masks or going outside without coverings or any such rights anywhere near that. And because the federal government has chosen to leave it to the states, and the states are saying that in this state you have to wear this mask, or you have to wear a face covering to go close to the actual verbiage, that's up to the state. That's guaranteed to the state by the 10th Amendment. It's up to them. So you can challenge it in New York State court, and you can try and say that it's against the Constitution of New York, but New York absolutely has the right to do that without violating the Constitution. Simple as that. The 10th Amendment says, look, if it's not unconstitutional, the states can do it. Done. That's it. And so, if it's not mentioned in there, the states can do it. And this has been upheld time and again in many, many different ways and means. That this is really what establishes states' rights as an argument. That it does actually codify it in the Constitution that the states have as specific rights. Or rather, I guess the states have rights and we are not going to be specific about them. Key distinctions. So, those are the 10 amendments that were added to the Constitution in order to make it so that those who did not like a centralized government of the Constitution got them on board. There were 2 other amendments. One was about the specific numbers and numbers of representatives. That did not pass, and it still has not passed. There was a 12th that passed as the 27th Amendment. This fun little idea. That the idea was that if Congress gives itself a pay raise, that pay raise doesn't take effect until there's been an election. And so if Congress gives itself an absurd pay raise, and then the people look at that and go, no, and vote them all out, then that pay raise doesn't have to go into action. Or at the least, it wouldn't benefit the people who made the pay raise. They all got filtered out in that election. There must be an election between when a pay raise is ratified and when it takes effect. That is the 27th Amendment that was ratified in 1993. So that extra little amendment that was mentioned all the way back in 1790 took 200 years before it became an amendment. And it's kind of crazy to think about that there is an 11th Bill of Rights. It's just not included with the rest. It's indeed the most recent of the amendments. And so that is all I have for you. That's the end of the episode. What you just saw is this teacher's interpretation of events. If you use this for a class, let me know how that went in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you can figure out how today's jersey matches the content, let me know in the comments. That's extra credit. I'm John Baranowski, and thanks for watching.